Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to wait a minute. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got a bunch of people arriving now. Hello, welcome, 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 welcome. In fact, everybody who's arriving, I'm Mark. I'm one of the founders here at Qwilr. It'd be lovely, actually, if you could just quickly share with us. We've got Nathan here, we've got Marina here. I'm going to give them a proper introduction in a sort of second. But welcome, everybody. We've got about 40 people so far. So look, actually, it'd be great just to sort of say, I am dialing in. It's 8 a.m. in Sydney. Nathan is dialing in. It's 8 a.m. Marina, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. It is 6 p.m.
We are all around the world. If you would like to share in the chat where you're dialing in from, so I'm from Sydney, Australia. If you want to share in the chat where you're dialing in from, that would be great as we just wait for everybody else to come in. And it's always lovely to see where people are dialing in from. Welcome, Niall. Great to have you from Auckland and Melbourne and London. And oh my gosh. Wow. Istanbul, 1 a.m. Dogan, you're doing very well, mate. Detroit, England, St. Louis, Houston. Oh, a few from Vancouver. There we go. Oh, hello, John. There we go. Go Cards. All right. Good work, Dogan. I think that's a good strategy. I have both Nathan and I have young children and had disrupted sleep, so we're planning to have naps later, I think. Anyway, 1 a.m. Saudi. Okay, great. So look, I think we're going to get started in about a few seconds. We're going to wait for a few more people to come in. Okay, so welcome, everybody. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. We're here to talk about a really boring topic today. No one has any interest in this one. It's not creating any hype in the market whatsoever, which is AI in sales. We're delighted to have two fantastic guests today. We've got Nathan Clark, who's the Director of Revenue Enablement at UpGuard, and Marina Barsoum, who's the Platform Program Manager at HubSpot. Both have got a bunch of interesting insights and a wealth of knowledge in this sort of space. It's a brand new space, so I think maybe wealth of knowledge is an interesting one, but we're all still learning. We're in the arena, learning, trying things. But I think that just to kick us off, I am your host today. I'm Mark. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Qwilr. We're obviously a sales tool that is starting to play around with AI ourselves, and got a bunch of things coming on that side. But Nathan, why don't you give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mark. You're right. Definitely, I went for a run this morning to feel a little sharper after not quite the best night of sleep with the kids, but that's okay. I guess the way that I've come to frame what I do is that I help ambitious leaders and their teams win more deals, and that mostly shows up at UpGuard at the moment. We're a cybersecurity company growing really fast. I get the pleasure of working with an awesome team that are taking a great product to market and helping them do that more effectively. I guess the way that, if I go back a little bit, the way I arrived at that is I've spent a lot of time at big tech companies like Apple, Samsung, and LinkedIn more recently, and then dotted in between a whole bunch of companies around corporate training, leadership development, really skills development. And I guess that's the intersection of where I've always played: skills development, some commercial focus, and then learning and development. So that's kind of my background. I also get to spend a little bit of time on the side with a small roster of clients, helping them do many of the same things. So think about getting their go-to-market motion, their sales motion fit and ready to scale. So spending lots of time with tools like this at the moment, definitely a hot topic.
Thank you, mate. We're very, very lucky to have you. And Marina, give us a bit of your background.
Thanks, Mark. Nathan's job is way cooler than mine. I am Marina. I'm a program manager on our product partnerships team here at HubSpot. So my role primarily focuses on all of our partner-facing content, enablement, advocacy initiatives, such as case studies and webinars with app partners like Qwilr. Prior to joining the partnerships team, I was a customer success manager at HubSpot. Prior to being a CSM, I was on our sales team at HubSpot. So I've had quite the go-to-market team journey at this company. But yeah, AI is definitely a hot topic here at HubSpot. Thinking back to my sales and CS experience and how it could have applied there. I'm excited to talk about it today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. We're thrilled to have you. And like, especially after all the exciting stuff that came out of Inbound last week, which I'm sure we will get to. So I think like, let's just sort of set the table here a little bit. Like, what is AI in sales? I think this is one of those topics. There's a whole bunch of things that are being discussed out there, a whole bunch of, I think, far-fetched ideas of things that might happen in the future. There's also some practical stuff that's been going on for quite a while, frankly. So I'm going to throw to Nathan. What actually, when you think about AI in sales, like what do you sort of think of?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if we take a step back a little bit and just think, AI, I don't want to be I'm certainly not the data scientist, talking about LLMs and machine learning and neural networks. I'm not going to be able to answer to that degree. But ultimately, the way I kind of think about it, and this is a bit of a crude way, is a lot of the ways that it's showing up at the moment is similar to the type of work maybe you would give an intern. So I think AI, it's very good at narrow tasks at the moment. It has really great crystallized intelligence, very little fluid intelligence. And so it does great when you give it lots of context, and then has just this amazing, powerful brain and horsepower to work through a whole bunch of things to get you some output. So it is everywhere. There's a ton of hype, but there are glimmers of transformational things. And I think the language model, so everyone's probably heard GPT at this point, or OpenAI and ChatGPT, is really the driver behind where a lot of this is showing up. So, a lot of the latest tools that are dropping press releases and saying we're now powered by AI, 90% of the time, what they're really saying is we're paying OpenAIs for their API and they're helping us do some great stuff. And I think that's just fine. It's kind of like becoming the cloud infrastructure. All of the companies we all deal with are sitting on top of Google and Amazon and Microsoft, in the same way a lot of these kind of newer tech stack tools in the sales tech stack in particular are sitting on top of a lot of the OpenAI technology. And what it's letting us do is make that which is slow fast, make that which was high friction, low friction, things that would just take a really long time to do personally, but isn't necessarily particularly hard, for an intelligent person that's capable, but just takes time, is what's showing up. So yeah, if you put it right across the sales tech stack, there are tools showing up everywhere, from prospecting, or really from demand gen through to prospecting, through to mid funnel activities. And then I think at the back end, it makes a total, because these things take advantage of so much data. You start talking about admin and revenue operations and forecasting. It's like, well, hey, go and look at all my data and tell me what's the trend from the last 6 months. And, that might have been a week activity is becoming a 10-minute, a query and a prompt and a couple of answers, and you're able to take advantage of it. So that's where my head goes. It's really about a whole bunch of narrow tasks that sit right across the sales motion. And I think there's a lot of hype, but there's these like little glimmers of transformational things all the way through. I think that's the exciting part for me.
That's a fantastic answer. I love the framing of like an enthusiastic intern, someone incredibly fast, also someone who occasionally might make some mistakes, do something a bit weird and unexpected, which I think we've all had a few experiences with AI occasionally doing something along those lines. Although I'm sure over time that will trend towards improvement. Marina, what do you think when you sort of think about sort of AI and sales sort of generally?
Yeah, I think Nathan summarized that really well. My big three, basically any techniques that involve assisting sales teams in making more informed decisions, increasing efficiency, and automating tasks. Those are kind of the big three that I think of when I think of AI in sales. And I think, obviously, I like the phrase that Nathan used, glimmers of transformation. Clearly, there's room for improvement in this space, but also like there's so much potential with those, I guess, big three in particular.
Yeah, I think certainly around at the stage that we're in, there seems like there's a lot of tooling that exists around that sort of removing that friction, that automating of tasks. And I think there's a level of task automation that existed previously. Like we all use a whole bunch of tools out there, including the wonderful Qwilr and the wonderful HubSpot to help sort of automate various rep tasks. But I think that these new tool sets are giving us a new way of like actually going a bit deeper into there, or again, making certain processes a bit faster or a bit easier, a bit less friction. Okay, so before we sort of dive in too much, I wanted to have a bit of an audience poll. So this one is for all of you out there. So Sarah, the wonderful Sarah, who's in the background making all this actually work, if you could kick off the poll when you're ready. Okay, so this is a multiple choice. You can choose as many answers here, but where have you adopted AI in your sales process today? So it's totally fine to say we haven't. We're not doing anything here. You can say prospecting, email outreach, forecasting, note taking. ChatGPT just to sort of ask questions on the side as you're sort of going through your day. So please vote now, and in a minute or so we'll sort of close this poll, and we'll roll into the next section. But really sort of keen to sort of see where people are at. Countdown. If you haven't voted yet, please vote now. All right, Sarah, whenever you're ready, we can close that poll, I think. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I think like, frankly, a quarter of people saying that they haven't, like only a quarter, is maybe a little surprising. I would have thought maybe more than that, to be honest. We've got one person doing forecasting, a good chunk playing around with prospecting and outreach, a chunk playing around with note taking, and then a whole bunch of people who've played around with ChatGPT and maybe think about how they can sort of incorporate that into their workflow. Marina, when you see that, what's your first reaction?
ChatGPT is a big one. That was my reaction. I was like, okay, everybody's using that and probably leveraging it to help them with prompts, or I guess thinking about my role today, just like how I create content. But obviously content is it's a big part of sales as well, even though you're not necessarily writing blogs. So that was a big one. For the people that said that they haven't, I'm actually really curious to learn more about why, and that whether it's hesitations or figuring out your processes internally and where AI maybe fits, and you haven't quite figured that out yet, but that's kind of my initial reaction. And I'm sure if folks feel compelled to put that in the chat, feel free to do so.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that, I think from my side, just like seeing prospecting, email outreach, I think makes sense. I think that's one of the things that's been like talked about a lot. And I think like starting to play around with that, that's also an area where I think that can be, there's definitely some like really good wins there, and maybe some risks as well. Let's actually flip around a little bit and go into like how these have been used inside your company today. So I'm going to kick off with you, Nathan. How are you thinking about AI inside either UpGuard or other sort of client companies today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in an interesting spot in that, I'm not like the quota carrying, salesperson, and also not, running the business line. And so I kind of sit on the sidelines going, all right, how can we help in all these little sections here? And what I'm seeing right now is a lot of ad hoc usage in most places that I look, and so it's not an official part of the process, but people run into a roadblock. They go, ChatGPT might be able to help with this. I gotta write an email summary back to this, to this prospect. I'm writing my notes. Oh wait, I've got a summary of the notes ready to go in Gong or Chorus. It's ready to go. So those things are showing up. I think like for the most part, it's not being built into actual processes, and part of that is actually, I guess, a little bit of a symptom of, I don't think we've like arrived at the final place of like, what's the best UI to engage with AI? It's like pre-iPhone phone. Do you remember like all the different Nokia phones? There was like they would have 50 phones out at any one time. They all look completely different. And we're just like, yeah, that's normal. And then the iPhone comes out and you look at every other phone after that, it's a slab of glass, because we're like, oh no, the touch screen is the best way to interact with a mobile device. And I think like right now we're like stuck in this, Nokia 2006 world where it's like, well, there's these things and these things and these things. I think as we start to see like the best way to interact, it'll show up more. I don't know if I'm completely sold on, the chat being the final boss of AI, but it's certainly good. And but like you can do everything, right? And so I think that's just part of why we're not quite seeing it, everywhere. In our company, we're certainly looking at it from a product lens. I won't speak to that today because it's more of a, sales focused thing. But that's probably where we're spending the most amount of time. And then for me personally, on the enablement side, if there's any people here in revenue operations or enablement, I think, smaller team, enablement and RevOps teams are typically much smaller than an actual sales team. So you've got way more ability to make change quickly and make decisions and use things and try stuff and experiment. It's not in front of the customer necessarily. And so for me, I'm using it for like lots of stuff. I literally have an open, chat GPT interface on my window. I've got this giant screen here. And right now I have a chat GPT open chat window just permanently. And anytime I want to just quickly like test something, run some messaging. Hey, could I improve this? Imagine this. What am I not considering? I try and give it prompts like that. And I think there's lots of companies doing similar stuff where that's being generated. But yeah, I'm actually not seeing tons like built right into the sales process at the moment.
Yeah, can I just give it a quick +1 to as you get started, and look, a whole bunch of people are playing around with ChatGPT, like 2/3 of our audience said they are. Can I just also just strongly encourage, like, if you just have the ChatGPT or a similar sort of, Bard or whatever else open on your screen, like just as a sort of little separate area, like I sort of have it on like, my side of my screen here. It just is this little visual cue to sort of remember like that it's there. And I think you'll find yourself just starting to throw in a few more questions or ideas, or how would I think about this? Or how could I maybe do this on a bit more? And I think like, it just sort of helps you, I think, understand this new form factor. It's like buying, to use the iPhone analogy, it's like buying the iPhone early and sort of learning how that works quite quickly. I think it is important just to play around with these things and start to have an idea of what they're capable of. We're definitely like very, very early here. All right, I'm going to hand over Marina. So HubSpot obviously announced a huge range of features last week. So I suppose I'd be keen to know, like, A, how is HubSpot thinking about AI in their product to some degree, but then also how's your sales team using it today and how they think that? I'm sure those two things are intertwined.
Yeah. So some context too. So I think what a lot of what we're hearing, and I'm sure other teams are hearing too, is like teams are being asked to do a lot more with less. And when you're being asked to do a lot more with less, productivity takes a hit. Enter AI. So here is, so at Inbound last week, or HubSpot's big annual conference, we announced a slew of AI tools that are going to be launched throughout across the entire platform. With AI and sales specifically, tools like forecasting and our chat spot, which is basically leveraging ChatGPT within our CRM to ask it questions to help generate specific answers related to the data you have in the CRM, and things like prospecting, are all gonna start incorporating AI. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat that has basically every feature that's gonna be launched. A bunch of it right now is in private beta or public beta or is in alpha. So to the point that we were making earlier, it's like we're not quite there yet in terms of this being full-fledged and like fully ingrained in our platform. We're starting to chip away at it with all these new feature launches that our customers and users and prospects can start to really play around with and see how those tools can really impact their efficiencies. And this is all obviously coming from feedback that we're getting from our prospects and users. But I'll drop that link really quickly.
Great, thank you. So Dawn has asked a great question, which, Dawn, I promise you we are going to get to that one in just a second. If you do have a question, there's a little Q&A section inside the Zoom webinar sort of functionality. If you want to drop it in there, we will try to get to, we're going to have a Q&A section at the end. We'll try to get to every question that we can. So thank you for that, Dawn. I promise you we're going to get into lead gen sort of in a second. Actually, do you know what? Let's flip this around now. So I think like when we sort of think about the opportunities here for like for sales leaders to sort of think about using AI in their orgs, there's a whole bunch of buckets that come to mind for me, right? I think there's a bucket of like, let's start with Dawn's thing of like creating sales leads. There's a bucket of like doing email outreach, doing, how can I use this to sort of help I suppose the way I think about it is like, there's been a trend in sales for a long time around personalization. So you're doing all this email outreach, initially it was like, we all know first name, various other sort of, form field things that get in there. We've all got the email of like, hey, first name or whatever else. But I think it's been that sort of light level of personalization. AI allows you to be much more sophisticated in that and say, hey, inside this section, I'd love you to sort of, go and you can write prompts to sort of have them create personalized little bits and pieces there really easily. So rather than you going and doing a bunch of research on that company to understand their needs, you can start to have that be a little bit faster through the AI. Again, you occasionally will, as you're starting on this process, I think you want to start slow before you start blasting out tens of thousands of emails on this sort of side, so that you can start to see like, okay, actually this prompt generated a weird outcome every fifth time. Like, how can I actually start to ask the AI the question framed in the right way? And I think a big part of this is learning how to ask the AI the question in the right way to get a consistently good answer. I think that's one of the biggest skills our engineers, our product people, our sellers have been sort of focused on as they sort of learn more about this inside this space. But there's also stuff like in the back end of sales stuff, like getting your data and you're cleaning your data and sort of saying, hey, I've got all this stuff here. How can I do data cleaning? It's great for, hey, I've just had a call with somebody. Can you help me summarize that call? What were the tasks that came out of that call that I have to do? Can I import that into Salesforce or Dooly or some other sort of, thing on that side? I think there's an interesting area around like coaching. There's an interesting area around sellers maybe don't always have perfect product knowledge. This is shocking to hear. I'm sure everybody on this call has 100% perfect knowledge of all of their product. But one of the things that we found is just being like, allowing an AI to run over some of our internal docs as well as our help docs, allow sellers to ask a question. And rather than pinging it to like the support channel in Slack and hoping for someone to get an answer back to them, which actually works very well, but it might take a few hours to get a good response, being able to ping that question to a database and get something back there. So there's lots of areas here, and I'm sure Nathan and Marina can think of a whole bunch more. But as a sales leader, if you're sort of getting started in this area, how would you think about like what's one or two areas you'd think about attacking first? And I think I'm going to throw this to Marina first.
If I was a sales leader and looking at where to attack first, I think making sure your data's clean first before you attack it in the first place or start thinking about leveraging it in the first place. I think like that's where it's powerful for sales leaders, right? Like you can get all of these data insights and make more data informed decisions for your teams, which includes things like, getting deeper insights into like your customer and prospect behavior, and looking at sales performance even of your team. But again, that data needs to be pretty solid within whatever systems you're using first, before you even think about leveraging AI or start implementing it in some capacity. But yeah, it could be really powerful.
Nathan, what about you?
Just coming off mute there, I had the baby screaming in the background. So let me tell you about a client example first, and then I'll kind of directly answer the question. So I have a client at the moment, really intelligent technical founder, very small team. They're growing, in a good place. Has somehow cracked I think really like cracked the nail here with automated outbound outreach that's like, or semi-automated. And I think really this is like where there's just so much upside. I don't think there's anyone sitting here. If you're holding a quota right now, there's no one here that would say, no, I'm okay. I don't want any more pipeline. And I don't think there's any sales leader at the moment that's like walking into, reporting up through their business going, no, we're all good. I don't need any more inbound leads.
Too much.
We're too much, right? Pipeline is the name of the game, and it is what it is. So, but it's a set of repetitive tasks. And you started to talk about it, Mark, with, highly personalized outreach. I think we're going to see, the end of, like, very quickly see the end of like mass email. You're not going to enroll someone into a pre-written sequence. I think it's going to be more like we're going to pre-write a template of what the experience looks like, but the actual content that goes out to everyone is going to be completely different. And why shouldn't it be? Because there's so much structured data out there. So this client that I have is doing, I think, a really great example of like kind of cutting edge of today. Automates actions that go out to LinkedIn, look at all the recent posts, understands the context of that, asks, uses GPT to, come back with something that says, hey, Marina, I saw your latest post about inbound. It's how exciting that HubSpot's releasing all these new features. Next time I'm in Boston, would love to, come out. In the meantime, do you have to, and just like it does all of these amazing things, it then pops that over into the CRM and has it ready for him to trigger out. And that's his workflow. It could be anywhere. You could put it into a, some sort of sales engagement software, whatever it happens to be. But I just use one data source. You could use 50 more. Also, where do you find them? And you've got tools like, say, clay.com. And I know we'll get to tools later and whatever, but I can't, avoid this. You can go and accumulate 3, 5, 7, data providers, Clearbit, all of these others, get the names. You can actually, like, again, I'm thinking like super pragmatic here. How do you like drive pipeline? And the question was, how do I get lead? Like, let's just answer it. Go and work out what your persona is. If you don't have that, ask ChatGPT. Hey, I sold this thing. We like this. What are the types of buyers? I sell to this title. What are their pains, jobs, the gains that they should expect from tools that they work with? What are the needs that they might have? What are the challenges they run into? What are the typical parts of a job description? Start pulling all of that out. Build a persona. Now with the persona, use Clay. Go and get a whole and a tool that will get you these leads. Load them up. Connect the data source providers. Now run that data back in. It says, hey, I found all these people with these titles in these locations. They're doing these things. Get their posts off LinkedIn. If they're mentioned in the news, go and work this out. Write me a customized email for every single one of them. And then I'm going to review and I'm going to pump them all out. And I'm not going to just hit fire. I'm going to read them all, but reading 100 is way quicker than writing 100. And so I just think pipeline gen is a huge one. And guess what? I think it's better for the buyer. Like the amount of crap I get of inbound emails that are so obviously I'm just enrolled in the sequence for the next guy that looks half like me. It's terrible. I actually think even though this is like mass market AI driven, it's still going to be outreach that says, Nathan, I saw that you're on this Qwilr webinar talking with Marina and Mark. Obviously, this is of importance to you, and maybe read the whole transcript somehow at some point. That's not far away. I've got this tool. It helps you do this. That's better signal for me as a buyer. So yeah, I'm pretty bullish on a lot of those pipe gen activities because they're so repetitive, and that's that kind of narrow use case that I think AI is already very good at.
Love that. And I think also one thing that I like about that task workflow is that the AI is generating the email, which is being dropped into the CRM as a task. It's not auto sending. And so I think that like this is, I would say that I get emails today that I am like, this, I'm pretty sure was written by an AI. And I think that that's, maybe I'm a relatively more sophisticated person on this front, if that makes sense. But I think that still doesn't come across very well. And so I would say that like sometimes AI can write in a bit of there's like a strange sort of passivity. There's a certain way that it speaks that is a little funny. Obviously you can ask it to change tone and whatever else, but even so, it has a few, I don't quite know how to describe it, but it sort of feels like this sort of
very clinical.
There. Yeah, there's something anyway. But I think that like having that dropped in as a thing means that, okay, they haven't gone from 0 to 100, right? But it's not 100% done that task, but it's gone from 0 to 80%. We all have like blank page itis, right? Which is like, the blank page is scary. Therefore, we should just use a sequence. But then the sequence is like not enough, not personalized enough. And I think this is a wonderful way of getting to 85, 90% done. Obviously, you can just send that off straight away. You can make a few small tweaks to it. You can make a lot of more tweaks. You can also take that text and ask the AI to rewrite it, right? Be like, hey, can you rewrite this in a bit of a looser tone? And then they can go from there. And I think that like that as a way of starting out here means that you should be getting a much higher quality personalization going out to your and doing this in a way that is scalable, that you can, whether it's the AE or the SDR or the BDR, whoever it is, can actually do tens or maybe hundreds of these in a certain period of time that then allows you to actually have that good quality outreach and sort of find that side there. And I think that, like, again, understand, pulling in those different data sources, and again, we will come to tools later. I think that can be like quite a powerful way of doing it. But in the early days, which we are still very much in the early days, I love the idea of having it as a task rather than having it auto trigger as an email, because I do think that no breath is better than bad breath. If you get an email sent out to you and you're like, this was generated by an AI, I actually think there's some risk of trust being eroded in that thing at this sort of stage. And so I think that you do want to make sure that it feels like it's sort of coming from you and feels relatively genuine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so we sort of, I think, like, from a sales leader side, I think, like, can you use the tools that are out there to clean up your data? Can you also clean up your own data and make sure that's in a good spot? I think, like, that's genuinely true. Like, if you had that in a better spot, all the value you'll get from AI being applied to it is going to be much better. I think we've talked a bit about prospecting and email outreach and that sort of side there, which I think is like a very valuable part. Actually, quick pause for an ad from our sponsor. No, not really. But Marina, like, actually, did HubSpot has, I think, like, some new prospecting features? Is AI being built into that? Okay. Do you want to give us a quick little, how you
Yes. Yeah. The prospecting AI is currently in a private beta. But that's the idea, right? It's being able to, like, surface specific, like, accounts and contacts and leads based on specific properties and filters without having to manually do that in the CRM today. But yes, that is on the roadmap.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that's exciting about that as well is, like, HubSpot is very good at allowing you to see how your sequences are performing. And so if you start to use a bit of personalization in that side, you can start to be like, okay, well, this particular prompt set is yielding this particular result, and now I can start to A/B test that and split test and do things like that over time as well. And again, learn and try to figure out sort of more and more on that side. Okay, so we're talking a bit about the prospecting part. What if you were a rep? Right? Like, what if you're a rep, day to day, sort of using this to actually be able to like, make your life a bit easier? What's your, do you have, like, thoughts on, like, one thing that if there are reps on this call rather than sales leaders, one thing that they could do to speed up their process, make their life a bit easier, automate a bit more tasks? What would be the sort of the first stop here you'd go to? And I'll start with Nathan again.
I mean, we've said it a few times here, but it's hard to avoid this being the actual, in my view, the actual kind of correct answer. If you join this webinar, you read the title and you're like, where do I start? This is my actual answer to that. And it is, I would have some UI into ChatGPT. And I personally use Raycast. I pay for that. And I have this kind of window to type in. I get the same responses. So I'll just call that out. But, I think we've all had a difficult email come back from a prospect, and you go, oh, okay, I've got to think about this, and you're writing this, and you check your manager's calendar and see they're still in a meeting for an hour, and you wouldn't mind getting their thoughts on it. Like, but I got to reply quickly. Let me just start. I want to say this to my prospect. I'm concerned about X, and they've told me Y. What should I reply back with? Get a response. Okay, great. Now make this a little bit more casual in tone. Great. Don't include this because I think it's going to cause this issue. Fantastic. Go drop that back into the email. Now the Slack message to your manager is like, not, can you help me respond to this? How do I answer? It's, hey, I think this is the approach that I'm going to take. Are you cool with that? Thumbs up or down. And maybe they can reply in Slack while they're sitting in that meeting, and you're getting back to your customer or your prospect quicker than maybe your competitor is. And I think there's something to be said for just speed and responsiveness. I know the vendors that I deal with, like, it makes a huge difference when they're, fast. And we know that close rates are higher on vendors that get back to prospects quicker. So, I think for me, it's a lot about that, like, high friction. You could get there on your own or get there with a little bit of help. Let's just turn, hours into minutes into seconds in a way that's really, really quick. Same thing for if you can get, if your company has some way to, like, pass your knowledge base and get answers quickly, if you can put an AI onto that. And I know ChatSpot is doing that right now. I actually checked it out after Marina gave us the scoop last week. So,
I played with it earlier today too.
Yeah. So, so being able to query, stuff inside your company and get an answer really quickly, I think is a great win. But yeah, that's where I would start.
I think you may have just stolen Marina's point, but yeah, Marina, what would be what would be your go-to if you were a rep? Yeah,
it was around the product knowledge, because I just think about, like, just speaking from my personal experience as a rep at HubSpot, and even when I was selling, our product wasn't nearly as robust as it is today. But even back then, I was like, wow, there's just so much information on our platform, and like as a rep, I don't have time on a demo or on a even on a discovery call to just like Google search everything, which is kind of what I was doing if I didn't know the answer to a question. And now I just can click on a prompt within, ChatSpot, or even if it was just using ChatGPT, obviously it has information on HubSpot within it. So I can, type a prompt in there and get an answer, which is so valuable. But also thinking about like my day-to-day tasks as a rep probably involve like going into my CRM or whatever it is that I'm using that has all of my contacts or prospects or customers, and figuring out how to organize my day, and being able to like just again either type in a prompt or click on a prompt that says like, pull up all of my companies that are in this industry and in this location, because that's my territory or something like that. And being able to do that within a couple of clicks versus having to use filters, like that's really compelling, and saves me a ton of time, and more at bats and more ability for me to reach out to more people means I can potentially generate more pipeline and not have to worry about me figuring out how to use a particular tool or asking my teammate in a Slack channel on, hey, what report did you use for this, or what filters did you use for that? So yeah.
That's both great answers. I think the we're going to move on to recommendations, sort of answers, talk about some actual tooling here before we move into the Q&A. Just before we do that, I did this little audience question that I have here, which is would love to know, are there any tasks or things that you do or parts of your job that you would love to see AI automate? So feel free, you don't have to answer this one, but if you've got a few things, you've got some things in there that you've been thinking about, like, I really would actually love to have this be automated, please drop it in the webinar chat. We'd sort of love to see it, and we might sort of come back to some themes that come up there as we go on later in the day. Okay, there are a whole bunch of other questions we would love to go into, but because of time, I'm being reliably informed that I need to move on. So I think like let's go into like recommendations and spend some time on AI, like the actual AI tooling. And we can sort of spend some time here talking a bit about like some different things we're seeing on this side. I am going to use my prerogative as host here to sort of to do a little bit of shameless plugging about like an early tool that we've been playing around with at Qwilr. I'm going to drop it into the chat now. We've been playing around with an AI page builder. This is a way to sort of play, start to say, here's how you can again go from not from 0 to 100, but here's how you can start to build out content inside a Qwilr experience to sort of say, hey, I've got a new use case, I've got a new type of customer I'm pitching, I want to start to play around with different language here. We're very early on this side, and there's a whole bunch of interesting work we're doing inside Qwilr. Someone asked a question about that. I'll spend some more time on that later. This is our first one that's out there. I encourage you to have a play around with it. It's a very fun little tool to sort of show you what Qwilr can do, but also it does allow you to play around with new use cases and new types. And a thing that we've sort of found is like, as we've grown, like, yes, Qwilr is a sales tool, but you can use us, and traditionally people use us mainly for proposals. But there's a whole sales journey of documentation that you can go on here, whether you're leaning towards earlier side and building pipeline, or whether you're leaning towards customer success and onboarding and things like that. And there's a whole bunch of interesting use cases there. So that's been one of the ones that we've been playing around with. But to actually sort of get started here, what are some of the favorite tools? I think everybody here has been very like enamored with just have a tool that is a chat GPT type tool that is open on your window that you can play around with and start to learn this. But in terms of specific tools that we're seeing, where would you go on that sort of side there? So Marina, I think why don't you give us a little overview of some of the ones that are coming from HubSpot, if there are others that you'd like to sort of call out from HubSpot partners as well.
Yeah, so with HubSpot, we've got obviously ChatSpot, which is in public beta right now and also free to use. So you don't have to be a HubSpot customer or paying us $1 to be able to use it. And that one's been fun to play around with, just to look at how we're thinking about like generating sales templates based on the specific information that you put in. So you can literally put things in like, hey, I'm trying to reach this leader at a technology company. They just posted on LinkedIn. Here's the post. There's like literal like sections for you to put in that content, and then ChatSpot will generate that template for you, versus you having to think about it. And you can also change tone as well. So I think, Nathan, you kind of brought that up earlier. There's this little widget where you can say like, make this more, straightforward, or make this more funny. You can like add a specific type of tone that you want to it, which is pretty cool. And I'm personally really excited for like the forecasting piece of this. I think maybe because selfishly, when I was a rep, I was terrible at forecasting. And I was that rep who had their manager asking them, hey, can you update your forecast in this Excel sheet? And now with AI, forecasting AI, that'll come out eventually. I don't have to do that, or I wouldn't have had to do that. And future reps wouldn't have to do that because HubSpot uses HubSpot. For other tools, as someone who like currently today creates content from like a marketing perspective, which I know is not relevant to this, but like Jasper's a big one that I see a lot of our customers using. They're an app partner. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and plug the Qwilr page builder. Everybody should use it. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. And I know, Nathan, you have thoughts on plenty of, I feel like you have like a list. You're like, here's what you should do. Here's what you should not do. Listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, Nathan, just give us the answer, mate.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm not quite sure I'm there. You know what? For me, there's probably three standouts. I'm gonna like answer like a little adjacent first, and then just like kind of go down a bit of a list. My view is I wouldn't. The guiding principle I would start with right now is don't do new things and plug in AI. Work out what you're doing already and ask where can it be more efficient. And I know a lot of people interchange like effective and efficient. And I think right now, I think you're going to get way more upside faster and easier in make something more efficient than make me more effective necessarily. So do what I'm doing, but faster. That said, there are a couple of like counter to that. So, there are tools like Lavender that help you write better emails. They're going to be more effective. You're going to still have to write them. It's not necessarily going to make you way more efficient at doing that, although you should shave some time there. I would also call out clay.com. Maybe I've recommended it to more people than anyone else on the planet. I just think that what they're doing is awesome. And it's, only really possible because of the generative AI stuff. And then, think of it like a little bit like Zapier meets a spreadsheet, meets some AI functionality for enrichment. And they've got a wonderful page that walks through, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, they can reach out if they want. They've got this wonderful page showing use cases, like actual workflows, walking you through how to do the exact things that they're telling you that the product can do, maybe better than any other company that I've seen. And then every call intelligence software is adding AI into it, and that's a no-brainer. The reality of what's going on in a company, in calls, is actual, the call transcripts, and, that, large language models are able to literally read what's going on in these transcripts and give you call summaries, outlines, what to do next. Sarah said she was going to do X. Michael said to follow up with, at this point, we need to go and do that. And you can go and do that as a rep. So that's, for me, it's like, the tools you already have, go check out their latest releases and see what they're doing in AI, and then try and work out how you can be faster. And then think about some stuff like Lavender and Clay and Seamless AI, Jasper. And those are good places I would be looking at the moment. And of course, I'll make the last plug is like, I'm a Qwilr customer myself. Love it. Really happy with the new page builder. Plan to get in there this weekend, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. I think from my side, I think that I have been spending a bit of time on recently, and actually this was something that in preparing for this webinar today, and it was a point that Nathan raised, which is around, I think, like around coaching and mentoring and managing your reps. I think there's genuinely, I've seen some AI coaching stuff from some startups that are sort of very early and stealthy, that are actually decent. And I actually think that there's a lot of studies out there that say that AI applied to customer support, which is one of the biggest areas that AI has been implemented in so far, that AI applied to support improves your top performing customer support reps by like 5%, but it improves your bottom performing reps massively, like sort of lifts them up almost towards that top quartile. And I think that's a thing that I think about with AI coaching. I think there's going to be a realm where a lot of the core parts of sales, product knowledge, AI can help a huge amount with that. The core basics of like, here is how you should run a sales process, and here are the best practices you should always follow. They're kind of relatively known, and there's a lot of process there to sort of help understand that. And I think there's actually going to be a path on that in time that will actually be quite good on that. And no doubt there'll be a million different offerings here. But I'd say for right now, just for your own coaching and mentoring of your reps, one of the things that's really nice about AI at the moment is the sales leader can also use the summaries of the calls to understand what's going on in the deals. And so look, I manage a sales team. Like, we work closely with them. Like I've done a bunch of things on the side before. Like, there can sometimes be, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours of gong calls sitting there to be watched and reviewed. Like, there's no way you're going to go through all of them. And I think that being able to sort of see, hey, the 3 most important deals in your pipeline are ABC. I've read the summary of ABC. Actually, I've realized I should actually go and watch the last video for B at 1.5x, etc. And I think that the ability to have a much deeper understanding of what's actually going on in the deals that your team are working, and then give them coaching, mentoring, and feedback on that side, and spending more of your time being like, hey, I see what's happening is this. Let's talk about it, versus like, tell me what is happening with your deals, which is often sort of the case with a lot of these things. And it's understandable, but I think there can be a lot of value added on that side. Okay, we're running way too long here. I think we've got a whole bunch of Q&A that's come in today. I think that we're almost certainly going to have a second webinar about this at some stage in the future, because there seems to be a lot of interest, and there's a lot of topics that we can talk about. We've got a bunch of Q&A. We're going to try to go through and answer a whole host of them today. We're going to share this recording later. We'll try to follow up as well with some more information, and whether it's either answering your question directly or as blog posts and more content on this sort of side here. But we'll try to sort of get around to as much of this as possible. Okay, so Samuel has a quick question here, which is any recommendation on using AI to qualify leads? I suppose like my quick answer here, Samuel, is just to say that I think that all of the qualification software tools out there are incorporating more and more AI into that. Now you can do that through HubSpot has an offering there. We use a tool internally called Mad Kudu. I know that they're looking at AI and how they can apply different things to sort of help improve the qualification part on that side. Nathan or Marina, anything sort of else to add with regards to help that qualification process? It definitely feels like an area AI should make a huge impact in.
Yeah, I think like predictive lead scoring is a big one, where, based on criteria that you set within your tools, that will surface like a score that will help you prioritize which leads to be reaching out to.
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends on how you interpret it. You can do it programmatically, or if you're like, I just have to qualify deals as I go, then if you can clarify what that is, and then maybe do some work on the front end to go and get that information and have that score or something else, then yeah, that's the way I'd be thinking about it.
Yep. Andrew has a quick question here, which is, I've seen many of the SaaS products I use start announcing and doing AI add-ons on new features and leaving core functionality on the roadmap that users have been waiting years for. I'm sorry, Andrew. I feel like this is being directed at me. How will Qwilr and HubSpot deal with this tension? So I think from our side, to be very honest with you, we're not. The vast majority of our product teams are still working on like non-AI sort of core, as you sort of say, product features. The wonderful thing with AI, like here's a secret from all product things, is that like our AI page builder was built by my co-founder Dylan. I mean, yes, there were some other people involved here and there to help plug it all in, but it is quite. It actually can be, 1 or 2 devs working on things can actually make quite a bit of impact. Again, as Nathan said earlier, a lot of this is using a tool from OpenAI or one of the other large providers to help to take some data and then help give an in-app experience for what you can do in ChatGPT that has a bit more context than ChatGPT might have naturally, but it's basically applying that same model inside there. So actually it's not been a huge tension for us so far. There are a few bigger projects that we're working on. But really, I suppose the way it sort of tends to be is, we have an integration with an exciting sales tech platform coming up that I don't want to sort of announce more broadly, but like, as we're doing that integration, there's a whole bunch of core things that we're doing normally, but then we're sort of also adding some space on to, hey, let's make sure we can do this so that we can, pull in some interesting summaries or do some interesting sort of AI enabled stuff as well. Okay. Anonymous asks, is there a simple way to manage and store the data without a full-on data warehouse or overcomplicated setup or spending heaps and heaps of dollars? And I think with it depends what data you're looking to do and enrich and all that sort of stuff. To be honest, with our AI stuff that our sales team is using today, the vast majority of the stuff that's being generated ends up being stored and lived in HubSpot. We're happy HubSpot customers. And so I would say that we're sort of taking data from there and enriching it and doing things with it. We're also importing some new data into HubSpot on that sort of side there. But again, it's mostly storing text at the moment. Wonderfully, the storage of text is quite cheap and getting cheaper every year. So I think that part hasn't been too expensive. And I think the compute, yes, AI does have like larger compute costs, and yes, NVIDIA is making lots of money at the moment on that. But it's not that high for you can really get a huge number of queries out without too much of a cost there. So I think that part, we haven't seen a big pushback on that side. I suppose it depends on your scale though, and how complex and how much data you want to pull into it. I don't know, Nathan or Marina, if you've got anything else you want to add there.
I got kind of two thoughts. One is, Mark is right. The endpoint should end up like the natural place it should end up is the CRM. It's very easy to have any custom fields populated with data from AI or non-AI tools. So that's pretty like fundamental. If you're a little scrappier though, ultimately like a spreadsheet, and you can get Google Sheets or Excel. And there's very easy little like Google Workspace extensions. There are Chrome extensions that'll send stuff straight into there. I know Bardeen.ai, I think is the site. Will let you run a certain thing over a page, get some data, just go and drop it in, in a CSV or whatever you want. Clay is that kind of more automated thing. So that is what it is doing. And it is going and connecting a whole bunch of data sources. But ultimately, yeah, you can go and run a whole bunch of if you're scrappy, you can go run a whole host of discrete workflows, have them all populating into the same, columns and rows, and have it there. And then again, that can also eventually end up back in your CRM as well. I would also just be conscious from a data privacy and, PII perspective to be aware of handling that and whether you actually need to store it once you've performed the workflow that you need it to do. So, I'm not going to advocate for these things, but let's say you go and use Phantom Buster and you get or extract a whole bunch of LinkedIn posts out of LinkedIn. It's good that I'm not working there anymore, so I can say that out loud. You get a whole bunch of posts from people that you want to talk to, and then you feed that into the sheet. Maybe delete the sheet afterwards. Like, you don't need the LinkedIn posts. You've got the prospect, have them in the CRM, have the outreach that you sent them stored in the CRM, and maybe don't keep the rest of the data. That's but yeah, I really don't think like spending heaps of dollars is necessary in at both ends of the scale, unless it's a very mature programmatic outbound machine that's being built, which I think is a little bit outside of the scope of today.
And just plus one to like being aware of like the privacy requirements here and things like that. I mean, I think also if you go and use the sort of free versions of ChatGPT and whatever else, like, you need to be aware that the enterprise license with OpenAI and Microsoft Azure is much more data privacy friendly than the free sort of version. And so all tools like, you know, Qwilr and HubSpot, or I don't know what backend HubSpot has, but like all those tools have much more robust structures, and your data isn't being used to then further the training data. And so I think that is just something you want to be, you know, slightly mindful of as this space evolves. Okay, we've got I think possibly the last question here. So can you share your AI tech stacks and processes from cold outbound through to nurture campaigns? And then there's a question is, you know, is there any sort of ABM tooling, I suppose like AI based ABM tooling? So I suppose like Marina, my flow is to you, like HubSpot obviously has a huge marketing component. Is AI being built into ABM right now? You could certainly see a future where your personalized ABM marketing is generated that is then getting through to a personalized nurture campaign in some sort of interesting way. But I'm not sure that we're there yet.
Yeah, I don't think we are. I'm going to be honest. I'm like looking at our product roadmap. Yeah, I was looking at our product roadmap, and like our ABM tool is kind of just staying as is, specifically. And to be fair, I think we really lean on a lot of our integrations partners in that space with regards to ABM specifically. As for, you know, other parts of our tech stack or within the platform of HubSpot, AI is definitely going to be a huge component in a lot of our content generating tools like landing pages, blogs, campaigns, things like that. So.
And then Nathan, on your side, so you've shared a bunch of tooling here. Is there any other tooling worth sort of sharing to sort of think about, you know, nurture campaigns or ABM or cold outbound?
No, I mean, just as a principle, I don't really surface too much out of UpGuard. I mean, we're a cybersecurity company. We're trying to keep things pretty quiet. But you know, for what I'm seeing outside is more of these little endpoint tools, lots of Chrome extensions, Seamless AI, Apollo have stuff built in at the moment. Zoom Info's adding AI. These are all the kind of standard players. Yeah.
I will say that there's going to be an interesting bifurcation just like in the industry generally in terms of like, it helps to have a lot of data to be able to use AI to do interesting things. And I think that all of the incumbent players will be adding AI into different parts of the workflow sort of over time. And so it may well be the case. I'm sure there will be startups that come and are very successful here, but it certainly feels like right now that a lot of the value of AI is going to accrue to existing tools you use. And so it may be the case, again, to go to Nathan's point earlier about like, take things that you're already doing and make them more efficient, to sort of take that a step further. Sorry, startups. It may be the case that like, look at tools you're already using, look at their AI announcements that are coming out, or maybe you were thinking of, you know, moving to whatever, Apollo or some sort of other tool there, but it's sort of looking at what new AI tooling they have and start to play around and see, hey, can I actually use this to be a bit more efficient, maybe be a bit more effective in a few other areas as well. But sort of using that to sort of to help go on that side. Okay, friends, thank you all so much. This is a huge topic. We're still very much, I think, like all of us are still like both as individuals and as companies are still learning here. This won't be the last time we hear about this. This is definitely going to be something that goes into the future. But I just want to thank everybody so much for coming. And a huge thank you to Marina and Nathan for making the time available and for being so open and honest and transparent about all the things that they're working on. So thank you all so much.
Thank you,
everybody.